I am at section 5, which is speaking the unspeakable. And the terror that Dostoevsky talks to is basically that we have lost the ability to communicate because words are empty. I mean, the signs are now meaningless. This is the same basic. I mean, this is modernity. It's modernism. But at the same time, it's also the kind of thing that Baudrillard will say about the hyperreal, that we are now existing in a world of images of images of images, where we've removed ourselves from reality, quote unquote, that we have no contact with the real. Okay, and this is ultimately this problem of communication is at the center of the novel. I mean, it is a novel about communication, amongst other things, but very much about communication. And on 213, Joe is at this point where he says, I only want you should take a tiny little idea that is in my mind and put it into her mind, maybe 2-3 feet away. And so here is this desire to communicate because he doesn't have any other way of communicating. And the transmission takes him a lifetime. And so basically what he does is he begins to tap out the whole narrative that we have had. I mean, we've been inside. And what you have to remember at this point is that we don't know when it is. So Joe presumably is in France because they would not have had any idea this was an American, and they wouldn't necessarily have returned him to an American hospital. He might be in Britain, he might be in Germany, he might be in France. We don't know. It's likely that the Allies picked him up if he was that badly wounded, but again, we don't know. We can't say for sure. We have no idea. So if you thought, oh well, it's our people who are doing this, like now in the movie, Trumbo frames it as these sort of doctors who, I guess they have American accents. They don't have British accents, that's for sure. They're not French and so on, but it's not clear. The other thing is, when is it? It seems to be, according to the novel, that at least 2 years pass. But maybe more have passed. We don't know. How long does it take Joe to come back from essentially the void, the abyss that he comes out of when he's been insane, effectively, when the rat has been attacking his side, and so on. We don't know that. So is it, say, 1921, 1922? Because we know that he has Christmas a couple of times. So we have no idea of the quote-unquote real world that is around him outside. However, he is absolutely aware of the real world, right? And this, apart from the men coming in and putting the medal on his chest. On page 214, he says, it was as if all the people in the world, the whole 2 billion of them, had been against him, pushing the lid of the coffin down on him, tamping the dirt solid against the lid, rearing great stones above the dirt to keep him in the earth. Yet he had risen. So what we have here is Lazarus, and this is the character that we meet. We have the story of Lazarus, this body that they keep burying, and it keeps getting blown up. And this kind of thing absolutely did happen. I mean, it happened all the time, where dead bodies were blown. They buried them at night because it was the only safe time to do it. Even then, most bodies were just left outside the wire. It was just too dangerous to go out. But then they rotted, and people wouldn't be able to eat if they were new to the trenches. After a while, you're like, people just had to eat. They were like, okay, they'd seen it all, and they were just, they're like, okay, fine. Same thing happened in the Pacific Islands to both the American and the Japanese soldiers, where there were the corpses just lay out in the Pacific sun, and they just rotted. And but the men lost weight. Oh God, they were emaciated. So, same thing happened in Vietnam, but not because of the corpses, just because it was so hot and the men were so sick. But anyway. So there is the story of Lazarus, the corpse that's basically is buried. They go and bury it, and then a shell hits it and blows it onto the wire again. And so they got to take it off the wire, and it's rotten, right? And they've got to carry it back out of no man's land and bury it. And they have to do this 2-3 times. So they talk about it as Lazarus, because in You'll remember, or maybe not, but in the New Testament, one of the miracles, because faith, part of faith is justified by miracle in the Catholic Church anyway, and also in the Anglican Church. Unlike Luther, justification by faith alone. But God is justified, or his existence is proved or proven by miracle. And one of the miracles is that Jesus raises Lazarus. And when Jesus raises Lazarus, and if you look in the Apostles, that is the books that were written by the Apostles are Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, Lazarus gets a line. It basically says, and then Jesus raised Lazarus. The end. That's what happens. I mean, and so there's this story of Lazarus, right? And that's really all. It's a miracle. I mean, somebody says Lazarus has just died. Prove to us you're the Son of God. And okay, he goes up in the hills, and they roll back the stone, because they often buried bodies in caves. And he says, okay, God, bring Lazarus to me. And they do. That's it. God and Lazarus rises and he comes down. Now, in some movies about Christ, I think it's the greatest story ever told. This is one of the sort of classic Cecil B. DeMille cast of thousands, as they used to call it, movies, where there were these hundreds of extras that looked like thousands. My memory is that you see the event happen up on a hill, but you never get close, because it would be profane, according to DeMille. What an idiot the guy was, to show the raising. But that's not what happens in this next piece I'm going to show you. Okay, so have a look at this next piece. Okay, yeah, so let's have a look at this piece next. Okay, here we go.
Lazarus. In the name of the prophet, in the name of Jeremiah and my father, in the name of the most holy God, I call you here. I call you here!
Lazarus? Lazarus? How do you feel?
I like the light.
What was it like? Which is better, death or life?
I was a little surprised. Wasn't that much difference.
Give me a hand.
Okay, so that was Martin Scorsese doing The Last Temptation of Christ. And it's an amazing film. It's wonderful. I mean, the music is amazing. It's Peter Gabriel bringing together all these incredible musicians from the Middle East and from North Africa. No, it's an astonishing, it's an amazing, beautiful film. And astonishing here performance by Harry Dean Stanton, who plays Paul. And this, of course, is the rock that Jesus is going to build his church on. And Paul is a killer. And so basically, Lazarus can't be allowed to live because he's proof of Jesus' abilities to create miracles. So in this case, this is the book is, pardon me, the film is based on the Kazantzakis novel, The Last Temptation of Christ, where it's a story of Christ's life, and then there's this temptation, the very final temptation. And I don't want to spoil the story for you, but one of the things that happens in the novel is that Lazarus is raised, and they actually do have a conversation. Now, however, in the Bible, there's no conversation, and this is what Joe says. Never before in the world had the dead spoken, never since Lazarus. And Lazarus didn't say anything. He would tell them everything. He would speak from the dead. He would talk for the dead. He would tell all the secrets of the dead on 2:16, right?